They've stolen people's businesses. They drag their kids into every part of the drug business. They've had people killed.
Do you honestly believe every story they've ever told you?
Do you really think everything you do is to protect your family? Are you really that fucking shut down?
Welcome back to the Ozark podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth. No, I will not defend you in a court of law. I am here with my co-host, the man, Magnum Mills, and we're going to break down season 4, part 2 of the Netflix series Ozark. Mills, tell the people who you are and get everybody primed up, buddy, for this episode of the Ozark podcast.
Thanks, David G. Sometimes I think you get confused with won't represent people in a court of law with can't represent people in a court of law. Just saying. And hey, thank you for checking out the Ozark podcast. The series is over. You're still here, and we really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember hit the like button. Leave a comment there. If you listen to the podcast, please make sure you rate the podcast. Leave a comment. Again, we love positive feedback and 5 stars. But if you didn't like something, tell us what we did wrong so we can improve it. Please remember, obviously, this is going to be like super duper spoil everything. So yeah, there's nothing about Ozark that is not fair game here. We're going to talk about it all. Ye be warned. If you have any other feedback, it's a little more detailed, feel free to send it to OzarkPodcast@gmail.com.
Heave his warning, indeed. Let's dive right into breaking down season 4, part 2. We're going to start by giving our power rankings here. And based on how the events of season 4, part 2 played out, we each, Magnum Mills and Jamie G, we ranked our top 10 Ozark characters individually. We averaged those together to give you our collective top 5. We're going to start with number 5 and work our way up to number 1. Coming in at number 5, we've got our girl. It's all about the rain. Ruth Langmore.
Yeah, I'm probably the one who'll have to defend on this because I basically didn't rank Ruth because of where she ended at. I don't mind that the show killed her, but that's not what I wanted for her. And I don't think that's ultimately what she wanted, even though she accepted her fate. So it was just hard to say that when you come out of the finale there, that she feels like a winner. I'll stand by that. And I know you put her at 1, Jamie. You tell us why Ruth is number 1. And honestly, I know why Ruth is number 1, but
she will always be number 1 on the Ozark
yes, I know.
podcast,
Spoiler alert: when we do our series power rankings, if Ruth Langmore is a number 1 out for me, I'll fall over to shock. So
100% for me, Magnum Mills. It's because she stayed true to who she was at every twist and turn, at every up and down, leading up until having the de facto head of the cartel point a gun at her, knowing she was going to die, admitting to killing her son, being happy about it, and just going out in total Ruth Langmore style.
Are you gonna fucking do this shit or what?
I was happy for Ruth. The way this part 2 of this season unfolded, I enjoyed her flashbacks. I liked, her having her family happy all at once there. And she went out true to form, dude. And for that, anyone who's got the balls to go out like she did, dude, she deserves to be number 1 for me.
Roger Dodger, let's go over to the roller rink and go around till we get to number 4. And that's Jim Rattlesdorf, who we both actually ranked as our number 5 guy. That brings him in as 4 overall. But it's pretty obvious, right? He's number 2 for the Bird Foundation, for Wendy Bird. They now run the Midwest. Pretty easy win for Jim, I think, right? Simpatico here, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, not only did Jim basically pull all the strings that needed to be pulled and fix the ultimate fix to get them in, essentially, as you said, running.
He's a human plot device or Deus Ex Machina,
yes,
or whatever.
But you got to think where he went. He was sitting in at the meeting with the FBI, the cartel. He is extension. Almost everything the birds know, he now knows. That is powerful for a guy like Jim. give him, we both thought Jim wouldn't survive the season. You got to give Jim some credit. He came out, he deserves to be where he is.
Think about it this way, though. Whose black book is worth more, Jim Razzledorf or Dr. Caldera on Better Call Saul?
Oh,
but Jim's black book, right, is he's good, but it's his contacts, right? Because that dude, he knows everybody. He's just that guy, right? Like,
he knows everyone.
He has 3,800 contacts, and he can name 3,600 of them to you.
And
like,
not only that, he knows everybody's secret and dirt. So therefore,
and what they
drink,
their kids' names, their kids' birthdays, their dog's name. He's just that guy. And that's going to bring us into the top 3. And I just want to give a disclaimer, because of the way it worked, we each ranked all the characters and we divided by 2. We got our average. We had a 3-way tie up top. So Jamie G, start us off at the bottom of the 3, but just everyone should know that technically it's a 3-way tie for first.
Absolutely. Math is fun. Just leave it to Jonah.
Ask Jonah.
He likes math. Magnum Mills is the show's mathematician here on this Drinking Encouraged production. Now, number 3 for us, we've got Camellia. Okay, Camellia, I voted her number 4. Magnum Mills, we'll talk about why you voted her number 1. I just think she made such a power move throughout the season. And basically everything she did here in part 2 was right. She outsmarted everyone. She got what she wanted. She manipulated, and she now has a golden parachute from the FBI as long as she allows them to see some cash here and there, which is nothing for her. I mean, that's, shit, dude. Pablo Escobar had to lose $1 million a year to mice eating it. This is nothing for her to essentially, let her, let a little bit of shipment here or there go. And she's running the cartel. She's taking care of her brother. She's seeked revenge for Javi, her son. She's got everything, bro. She deserves to be in this picture. What catapulted her to number 1 for you?
I mean, you just pretty much sold it. She gets to be the head of the biggest drug cartel in the world and never have to be on any most wanted list or do a day in jail for it. I'm paraphrasing Marty Bird there, but that's it. She came from a character who was introduced in episode 8 to, by the end of the series, she got revenge for her son. She's completely legitimized and immunized from the law, and she's in control of the Navarro cartel, and she killed her brother.
And bro, she got stock options from Shaw Pharmaceutical. That's another thing.
No, but she's completely legitimate. That's what,
she's an equity owner. Yeah,
she got it all. Like Wendy said, she's everything and nothing all at once. She literally got everything. I think you actually made my case for her number 1 very well, so I appreciate that. And just next on the list, again, these are all tied. We have the first of the Birds from the Bird House. It is one Wendy Bird, who I actually had it 2. You had it 3. For me, it's pretty easy. Her foundation 1. She got all the vengeance she wanted. She got her kids back. The only reason she doesn't win it all is because Camilla still holds leverage over her. And Wendy Bird probably, I don't think she really reformed or anything, but she shouldn't sleep that easily at night. And she probably will, but she shouldn't.
I had her at 3, and we'll get to our next power ranking here in a minute. But for me, while she got in a real win with her dad, it came at a price. While she got a win with, we think, her kids, that also came at a price. And her foundation is there. Yes, she gets that, and I'm happy for her with that. But I just, she really stooped to a new low this season, and she didn't deserve to. I've got someone else rated a little bit higher here, but all the same reasons as you, Magnum Mills. I just think all those wins came with some, came at a cost for her.
Roger that. Why don't you flip it to the other side of that bed in the master bedroom of the birdhouse?
Absolutely. Sitting on the other side of the birdhouse in the bed of the master room is Marty Bird. I put him, number 2, and Wendy 3. You flip-flopped it with Wendy 2 and Marty 3. Marty was up on her for me because I watched Marty go through this season, where this part 2, where it was so frustrating, where he knew the decisions Wendy was making were wrong and the one that was going to lead them to more problems, but he just sat by and let it happen. Then we got mad Marty, and he kicked the shit out of this dude in traffic, and we've all wanted to do that in a moment of traffic. We don't, obviously, because that would be insane, but we watched Mad Marty. I think Marty got something far greater than anything that you can buy, any foundation, any sense of freedom or independence. He got confirmation that through it all, his children love him and respect him. And I don't know that Wendy got that. I don't think she ever will. I think it'll be a estranged kind of love if it's there at all. And I think Marty, we saw it throughout those last couple episodes, and even that last smile he gives Jonah, he got his kids back. And I think that's the biggest win that you could get for Marty Bird, other than keeping them alive. So for me, I put him just slightly ahead of Wendy.
Again, we're very close on these. I agree with basically everything you said. For me, I have Marty up there at 3 because he did what he wanted to do. He didn't save Ruth, but on the other hand, he made that tough decision to not try to warn her. And it took a while for him to get there. The show did a good job of showing that, with him going down to Mexico and having to make increasingly tough decisions. Although he didn't pull the trigger on a guy himself, which I think he should have. He still watched Nelson do it. He made himself do that, which I think brought him far enough along to allow him to let this happen to Ruth, so to speak. And because he did that, for right or for wrong, he got his kids back. He gets his life back. You know, the foundation was Wendy's wet dream. So that definitely, I think, justifies putting her over Marty. But I think Marty did also assert himself. So now it's going to be kind of more like Wendy gets to go do her thing with the foundation, and then everything else is Marty's kind of. Marty controls the home and more the immediate shit, the relationship with the cartel. Wendy just does foundation.
Yeah, political Wendy is just the best Wendy.
That's what she wants to do, right? So let her do what she wants, and then let Marty do what he's good at. I always thought that they were a good team, and we've seen them work well together. But yeah, they've been. It hasn't been often enough. They've definitely worked against each other more often than they've worked together, which is a shame.
Spot on there. I will say honorable mention, bro. We did have Jonah Bird coming in at 6. I had him rated number 6, and you had him 8, which gave him the average to slide in there for our 6. And I think just really quickly, it's pretty obvious why he's there, right? I mean, we saw him kind of come full circle from the whole buddy thing with the gun to, you know, making that last move there. I mean, he got the final, you know, screen time. So I think you got to give it up for Jonah, right?
I mean, he's a nice guy and he likes math. What
likes
math, you know, what else do you need to say? In the rest of the honorable mentions, we had 3 who I had ranked 4th, Jamie G unranked, Rachel Garrison, Jamie G unranked, I had 6, Nathan Davis, Wendy's father, Jamie G at 7, I had unranked, and Frank Cosgrove Jr., who Jamie G had unranked, and I had at. Anything else on the commentary on the rankings? Any thoughts on Charlotte being the only bird not listed? I had nothing against Charlotte. I don't know. It felt more like she kind of continued to get sucked in, whereas Jonah at the end, obviously, assuming he pulled that trigger, I gave him more points because he took some agency, I guess.
Yeah, I just didn't get enough out of Charlotte this part 2. We kind of, you know, part 1, I think we talked a little bit more about Charlotte, and maybe she showed up a little bit more because it was the first time we saw her really turning into a little Wendy. And we thought like, okay, maybe she's, you know, maybe she will be part of this thing in a different way. And we kind of saw her this year flip-flop, or I'm sorry, this, you know, part 2 of this season kind of flip-flop with the decision with, you know, going with Nathan and not, and just, you know, still kind of at dinner and supporting her father. We really saw her care about Marty when he went to Mexico and back, but just not enough of Charlotte and not enough development in the character for me to feel like she deserved to be on here, kind of.
Love Charlotte. Thought the actress did great, especially she had that one scene with Marty outside. Sophia Hubitz, I believe. Again, she didn't. This is kind of a power ranking of who wins, and we can pick out a couple of wins for Jonah. In theory, it's hard to pick out a real win for Charlotte. You go to like California. Go as far away as you can.
Go to Napa and become a sommelier. That would be great.
Just anywhere else. Go wherever you think Wyatt might have wanted you to go, or you just want to go. Just go. If you can get outside of the monitoring of the cartel, do it, please. Please and thank you. We want all the birds to be safe, but I feel like especially Charlotte, she seems, and Jonah, obviously. But anyway, that's out of the way. And that, you know, we're talking about the kids here. That brings us to, let's just go through a couple of the kind of major moments, storylines from season 4, part 2. In talking about the kids, a big part of their storyline had to do with Wendy's father, Nathan. He was a character we had a little bit of an introduction to before part 2 here, but he became a big part of it. how do you just feel about the character overall, where he ended up, and was it worth it just to, because I think he just kind of existed to show us just how bad of a place Wendy Bird came from, but I think there were easier ways to do that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, shout out to the actor who did an outstanding job with the intensity and the ability to be the world's biggest,
especially when he started
passive-aggressive
drinking.
asshole.
He did the thing with his face where he put on this certain, and he held it really well, and it was very consistent. Great job.
He did a great job, and he also, you know, was the world's biggest dick while being passive aggressive about it. And I thought he did a great job with that. I'm okay with it, Magnum Mills, and here's why. One, it was an important development in Wendy's history with why she is how she is. It was also almost a little bit of a villain for her, like someone that was beating her that was just as bad as her. And they didn't let us know all the way about Nathan until we got down to the finish line, and that was kind of cool. It also helped keep this Ben storyline that they hitched their wagons to more alive. And I think they kind of hitched themselves to this, but then they ran out of shit where it's like, okay, well, how can we make this a bigger deal without it being like, you know, something? And they used Mel and I think Nathan to do so. So I'm okay with it. It also created the drama and one more thing to kind of push Wendy to the brink with potentially losing her kids and also Marty. And so I'm okay with it. Are there better ways to do it? Probably, but I'm okay with Nathan's character. I think he added value to part 2 of this season.
You know, let me just soften you up to Nathan a little bit, so to speak. He's actually played by an actor named Richard Thomas. And do you know, I know who you would know him as? He's the boy, Frank Gadd from The Americans. That my boy Gadd, like that's him. That's him.
Yeah.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together till then. That's who he is. He's on The Americans. Wow. Another awesome show.
Shout out to
characters.
The Americans.
Also been on Billions. Originally back in the day, he was on the Waltons. I feel for a character who was brought in, he acted too much like a plot device. He was there to create conflict for the children, but give them a realistic way they could get taken away. And his conflict with Wendy could have been expressed if he visited for a 1 or 2 episode arc. He didn't need to be there for the entirety of this. They changed poles too fast. He went from being maybe a little unhinged. All of a sudden, he's a complete closet alcoholic. All of a sudden, it was just a little bit. I didn't like the characterization. I understood what they were trying to do. I think there were better ways to do it, like you said.
Yeah, see, I guess I'm chalking up some of that stuff where it just goes from 0 to 100 because it seemed like down the stretch here, every storyline just.
See, I think we're missing episodes. Shit. This really feels more originally, like I said, when you see this kind of truncated season, sometimes it has to do with contracts because actors signed for a certain number of seasons. So it makes a difference to call something 2 parts of the same season. But in this case, it was, all right, did they have 1 season left and they stretched it out from 10 to 14? Or did they have 20 episodes that they squeezed into 14? And this really does feel more like it was 20 squeezed into 14.
Yeah, because as we go through this, and anyone who's
there's missing stuff,
podcast,
there's stuff that doesn't line up with Ruth, or excuse me, with Rachel, especially with her former job.
There's a lot of storylines where it's like there's things you got to kind of grasp at.
Sheriff Guerrero just disappears. It goes back to Bucci's planet.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going here, Magnum Mills. I mean, looking back, do you think it was the right move to have Ruth kill Javi in episode 8? You know, just right off the bat there to kick off the part 2. This is really tough for me to answer because that episode 8, and this was the
same. It's my favorite episode.
It's my favorite episode ever, and this was one of the main plot lines that made this episode happen. So it's hard for me. It's kind of like, do you think he'd trade all that whole record and not have to go through all that shit? I don't know, man. I kind of love that we had this episode. I don't know that I would.
I mean, that's what makes it so perfect. In retrospect, I think it was both too early, and it actually makes it better. I think that actually puts that when we go back through the episodes here. I think looking back on it, that exchange between Ruth and Killer Mike, and looking at that episode that way.
It always feels to me like he hates it and misses it all at once. And he's only fucking 20.
You know, when I listen to that record, his projects are in Queens and you can kind of see Manhattan. And I've always thought it was so hopeful and fucking cruel at the same time.
Boy. But then obviously, even if that was the peak, So what? We've seen that. Like a lot of people think Breaking Bad, the peak was Ozymandias. Everyone still loved the final 2 episodes. They were happy with the finale. There's no reason that Ozark couldn't have kept the same momentum going, even if everything wasn't that good. So be it. Looking at it now, again, it seems that it got put there not for story reasons, not for pacing reasons. It got put there because of production reasons or something like that. I loved everything. I love that episode. It's my favorite episode of Ozark. But by doing that there, everything is off for the rest of the season. I can't explain it any other way.
Yeah, and that leads
Nothing
us
else
right
fits together past there.
Yeah, and that leads. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it leads us right into Camellia, right? And before we talk Camellia, though, didn't they kind of do the same thing with kind of boxing themselves in with the car accident? And we could talk about that later.
Let's save that to the end.
We'll save that because that's a major thing. But it's the same thing where they box themselves in by having Ruth kill Javi in that episode. Same thing happened in the first episode of season 4. Where they kind of box themselves in. Anyways, let's get back to losing Javi early. We get introduced to his mother, Camellia, and she more or less basically assumes his role here. How do you feel about this? I mean, she went from kind of like, we just got to know her to now the head of the biggest cartel in the world in 6 episodes.
That's a beautiful transition because that's, I think, again, showing that something happened behind the scenes because we lose Javi quick and abruptly like that. And he basically calls her in that one scene in season 8, and that sets her up, and she goes from that one phone call, never having been on the show or mentioned even before, to being the head of the biggest cartel in the world. If that was their plan all along, I don't like that plan. Especially because Omar was such a good character and remained fairly consistent. It just seemed like this was a thing where maybe something changed and they lost the actor who played Javi, so they had to pivot. And they wanted to leave Omar in jail. So the other options, let Nelson or Father Benitez run the cartel or just some unnamed person. So they came up with Camilla. And I think the actress did a great job. And she was like the best combination of Javi and Omar. If she was that good, it's hard to believe she would never have come up throughout the first, 37 episodes of the season.
Well, you would have liked for them to maybe plant a seed in season 2.
Just a little bit. We've heard
Omar
about her. Omar's
talks
sister,
about his sister,
Javi's mother. That's it. Just a couple of mentions would have been great.
Or at one point, Wendy needs to talk to Camellia because Omar doesn't trust her and wants a woman's opinion.
Or this other lady keeps buying up all the lawyers in Mexico or something, so they can't get any.
Yeah,
there's ways they could have integrated her into the plot that would have made it feel more natural. You're bringing on somebody late in the game who I guess is very competent enough, but you don't really have any emotional connection to them.
The devil's advocate here. It's believable that a family member would take over when someone's in jail. It's believable that, she played the role really well. All the things that happened throughout this part 2 season put her in position to be in charge. So, I mean, it's not totally far-fetched.
That's one of the more realistic parts of the show, probably.
It actually is.
You're not wrong. Just it was convenient, like when Javi called her on his way to the meeting with Claire and them. It was very convenient.
Absolutely.
It just seemed like something that the show probably, I would have liked to have had her and Javi around at the same time for a couple of episodes, doing some scheming and shit, build up the relationship, and then have him die. So it would have meant a lot more then. And then maybe her revenge against Ruth ultimately, while you wouldn't have been happy, maybe it would have felt more earned. Again, it feels like 5 seasons shoved into 4 now that an truncated 4.5 or whatever you want to call it, kind of.
Yeah, just being devil's advocate with it. It's
adding
some
more depth. It's like other finales we've talked about, we might not have loved. It's not that we don't agree with what happened. It's just the road that got us there just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's crazy because this was a part 2 where the season where things just, you had to kind of like go with it, even though like, all right, there's no way that would ever this is something where it's like, okay, at least it's in the realm of possibility. But I hated that they didn't. And to your point, they must not have thought this was going to be a thing, because otherwise they would have planted a seed last season, or the start of the first part of season 4. So this was a sudden change of something that has to be, otherwise that's just really sloppy. And I gotta say, I do not think that the show's creators, they've been so good up until this thing with part 2. I don't see them missing that.
How about Mel Satin, dude? Because he kind of came on at the beginning of season 4. At the part 1, he was just along I'd say he was in what, 4 out of 7 episodes and only had really one scene in most of them, maybe 2 at the most. So he was around the edges of the show. And then appears to come in, going to have a major role. Then he's off. And then he ultimately is the final bit of the show, really. Like, is the idea that Jonah pulls the trigger on him is the thing that brings him full circle. I like the idea of the character. It never seemed to work for me, especially if that's where they wanted him to end up. If he would have just gone away and not shown back up at the finale, I think I would have been fine with it. But I even get why they did a good job detective wise and why he showed up. I didn't like how it seemed forced to get to the ending they wanted to get to.
I was a guy who was a real big Mel fan. I loved him jamming in his car, chewing his gum. Yeah, I mean, he was cool as shit. Then when we finally realized come, part 2 of season 4, that shit, he really was just working for Helen's husband. And man, maybe it's not this bigger thing. I was let down. And then ultimately to see him just kind of wedge himself into the plot line with being able to testify for Nathan and having that, and then just be kind of bought out by the birds and they kind of win and solve that problem. He goes away. You're right. It would have been fine there. I hated initially that he was the person at the end. And it wasn't even that it's like, all right, he's good at being a cop. You're telling me he had to shatter an entire sliding glass door floor to ceiling? He's not a good cop. You can't fucking break out a credit card and shimmy it in there. I mean, this is just ridiculous here. Not good sleuthing. But I thought about it long and hard. As much as that scene bothered me, they had hitched their wagon to Ben. And the only way to do this, to push Jonah full circle, to pull the trigger, and we'll talk about who that bullet entered, maybe when we get to a little bit further on here, but it forced him to pull that trigger. I got to say, dude, it was the only way to do it with the goat, with Ben's ashes. And it's because the show decided a long time ago, Ben is going to be all the way to the finish line. And Ben was all the way to the finish line. And Mel was the only way to do it. It was the only way to do it with the goat, because they already killed all the Langmores that had anything to do with Ben. As much as it bothers me, I think, again, because they hitched themselves and said, no matter what, we're ride or die with Ben in this storyline. And Jonah coming full circle, that was the decision. It was the only way to do it. I'm not in love with it, Magnum Mills, but I've come to that place of peace with it a week or so after watching this and taking it in and thinking about it.
So acceptance, you've reached acceptance.
I've reached acceptance. Yes. Thank you, counselor. I've reached acceptance.
This is a spot where I can't tell if this was the original intent for the character, or if, again, they had to make changes behind the scenes or something like that, where he got used as a plot device after the fact to try to bring stuff back around. I don't want to just dunk on it because I thought that the actor was interesting, but they went from giving him nothing to do to all of a sudden he's working the birds, he's getting paid, he's trying to date Maya Miller, he's trying to get back on the force, he's got a sponsor in AA, he had all this stuff going on, and then they just wrapped it up all of a sudden, poof, he's gone. And then lo and behold, he's back again because of the cookie jar. I get the cookie jar thing, but that's also very sloppy at the birds part. Obviously, I do actually believe the crematorium being poor enough that they could maybe pull a little bit of DNA off. But again, in that end scene, after, like what you said, after he broke in the way he did, there's almost zero chance that evidence ever holds up in court. There's no chain of command. He's out there holding it in their backyard. They also own Sheriff Roddy and everything.
And
they're in the Midwest. Like, really? They just got him his job. It just doesn't track, really. It would have been a character that I think would have been, I was ultimately hoping that maybe he would have been wound up being actually like going to work for the birds like Jim does or something like that. I think that would have been cool. Or really being Ruth's guy in the casino. Maybe she hires him to make sure Marty doesn't launder money through it or something. Again, maybe if we had a few more episodes, you could have developed that a little bit.
We're doing a little good cop, bad cop tonight on the Ozark podcast. And some of that's intentional, some of that's natural flowing. But the one thing I will say about this is they did plant the seed where he's on the phone with his AA account. I think Mel Saddam really struggled with the fact of, I can be bought, and people like the birds, as evil as they are. Remember, he thinks they're a 9 out of 10 on the evil scale. As evil as they are, they can just win. they did a good job planting that seed that it really bothered him, so much so where he realized he made the wrong decision. He was willing to come back and expose it at any and all costs, because people like that shouldn't be able to get away with it. And I think one overarching message of the show is that people with money and power can get away with just insanely grotesque things that are, it's really is like, wow, I can't believe that's the world we live in. And maybe that was something they were trying to say, utilizing Mel and him being the one that was like, I can't let evil win, but yet evil won.
I think that's a very astute observation, especially when you look at it. Remember Mel, and like right away, he picks out when the birds give him his, letter back out of the force or whatever. He's like, oh, what'd you have to do? Like a boat or a car? And then when Maya, like, she knows when he has that lunch with her or whatever, that final lunch, what he wants her to say is, don't do it. And she tells him, I'm not going to be that person for you. And she leaves basically knowing that he's going to go back to the PD. And then she calls up the birds and basically lays into them and be like, oh, I'd explain it to you, but humanity and all, you wouldn't get it. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was a great call, Jamie. You right on the nose there. Anything else on our favorite gum chewing dick?
No, he is the ultimate.
He's your
the
favorite
goat
gum
of
chewing
dicks.
He's your favorite gum chewing dick. You have to.
He's the goat of all gum chewing dicks, and we're yes, the pun is intended with the goat cookie jar. I think we can get on to something we are going to both. There's no devil advocating this in all the world for me. I think we're going to agree on this next one, and rightfully so. It deserves everything that we're going to give it.
That's what she said.
All right, so when you go to Portillo's and you want to order the chocolate cake milkshake, you got to soften the people up. All right, we're talking about the fucking car crash. Let's just right away just talk about what the fuck were they thinking to put that scene at the beginning of season 4. I know that's not technically season 4 part 2, but that's where we saw the completion of the scene. So let's just talk about what on any planet in the solar system do you think they were thinking to put that scene first, knowing what was going to happen? Or do you think that when they initially did it, that scene ended differently?
I think it had to have ended differently. It had to have. I actually like the idea of putting that scene first. It takes balls, it takes courage, but what it does is it keeps the viewer guessing, concerned, waiting, and engaged and trying to figure out what could possibly come of that, because we all know there's no way, shape, and form with 6.5 fucking flips, the first flip going up clear.
Right, before you go to that though, real quick, that you have the right idea, but what would have made that better is if we saw them multiple times throughout the 4th season, all happy in the minivan together. So we're like, oh shit, is this the time? And they keep teasing it. That would have been better. But we never see it until the one time at the end, and it's so contrived to fucking get us there. That
they messed up.
If that would have, they could have created a great deal of tension, but they chose to make it so fucking specific that you couldn't use it as a good device. So
they had to have, but I think
they had to have ended different. There's no
had to have been a different ending. Like I think when they did that, the first episode of season 4, episode 1, I think they were probably so proud of themselves. Like, oh man, we just did something incredible that is going to make people, guess what the hell happened. We can go a bunch of different ways with this, maybe not a bunch, but you got 2 or 3 ways you can go with it. We never in a million years was one of the ways, just everyone's fine. So I think there had to be a different ending. I actually liked it, even though it was limiting to a certain degree and it's risky. I was on an all-time high with Ozark. I was like, all right, man, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Where are they going to go with this? This is cool. It was ballsy. I didn't see it coming. Then to not ever see it again and have it be so fucking insignificant. I stand by it, Magnum Mills. It's unforgivable.
Honestly, all I can say is that this is, of all the things you could have thought this would turn into, this is basically the worst. It meant nothing. It literally had 0 impact on the plot. You could cut it out. All you have to do is lose like 2 lines of Father Benitez. That's it. It could just never have happened. It would make 0 difference. Either it ended differently or this was Netflix made them do it, I guess. But I don't want to super dunk on it. I will say again, cool stunt. shot really well. All the flips look practically done, that they like flipped it and then pushed it back in the air again. And but yeah, nobody, I'm sorry, no, there's no way that even 4 belted in people all walk away perfectly fine. You would at minimum be held overnight for concussion.
Yeah, just take a cab home. It's still light out when you take the cab home. It's like afternoon. Absolutely not, dude. I am going to rail on it a little bit. It is unforgivable. It is almost to the point where it makes me take a show that I loved. It makes me second guess just a smidge. I'm not going to hate the whole show over this, but dude, it is close to pushing me over a boundary here of being like, I can't accept it. I cannot accept that they did that. They made it this big, huge thing just to have it be nothing, completely insignificant. It means nothing to the show. And if they did that, then it's like, dude, you didn't need to for clickbait. That's the most gimmicky bullshit.
It's the worst possible option. They literally could not have picked a worse option. If they had gotten beamed up to an alien spaceship as the accident was happening, that would have been better. I cannot think of anything worse than what they did. They picked the absolute worst outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is, again, unforgivable.
It's unforgivable. It's the worst
in
an infinite universe of options. They picked the absolute worst one. Infinity.
Yeah, I almost want someone to answer for it. Like I want someone to like. I feel like we deserve
with the true Hollywood story. Like fast forward 10 years from now, give us the real behind the scenes shit about what happened here.
We deserve it,
because of the timing with COVID. It totally makes sense that there probably were a bunch of things that happened. I'm sorry, this is the product they put out, so this is what we have to judge them on.
Yeah, and what sucks is they spent some money on that, dude. Like that was a bona fide. I mean,
Crash was great. No problem with the actual stunt. Killed it.
Yes.
Look,
I mean, we
they all
counted
should have died.
6.5 flips.
You made me think they were all going to die. Congratulations.
Yes. I mean, the stunt was incredible, but that wasn't a cheap thing for the show to do. You know, I mean, that was a horrific accident. I mean, that first flip, they had to be 15 fucking feet in the air. 6.5 flips. Again, I can't with it. I'm still angry about it. I'm always going to be. I can't forgive it. Any other worthy topics here for you that you might want to slide in?
Again, just it seems like there was stuff missing. Sheriff Guerrero disappears. Yeah. Rachel has 2 different jobs. She either owns a diner or an upholstery business, depending on who you're talking to. Just feels like there was stuff missing. No need to harp on it. I actually didn't mind the reintroduction of Rachel. I wish she would have had more to do. Didn't mind that. And I wish they would have gone more like they went with the Illmatic theme for episode 8. I wish they would have done something more with that, whether it was Nas continuing through or done kind of a different album per episode or something like that. I don't know. I just wish there was something more thematic that maybe it carried through from the beginning of part 2 to the end to make it feel more like one cohesive unit than, because it kind of felt like there was episode 8 and then everything else.
What's sad is, and I kind of saw it happening, but didn't really want to be honest with myself about it while we were doing this Ozark podcast. And if you look at our grading system, it shows it, but every episode kind of went downhill a little bit from episode 8.
Which is the reverse of what the show had done before.
Yeah.
It had been basically every season it got better, and generally during the season it would get better, even to hit a couple lulls. They'd always hit their stride by the end of the season. So that's why you have faith in that they would do so again.
One of our favorite parts of Ozark has always been the dialogue, and season 4, part 2 did not disappoint on that front. We each, Magnum Mills and Jamie G, we each ranked a bunch of our favorite quotes from part 2, and we're going to give you our favorites starting from the bottom like Drake and working up to the top. Coming in at number 5 for us when it came down to quotes. And again, before we do this, all the quotes were awesome. It was really like we could have did a top 40 and probably been like, shit, I wish we had 50 quotes. I mean, there were a lot of good quotes. Dialogue was great. Magnum Mills, we basically had a 5-way tie here for number 5. So we're just going to, filibustering here on the Ozark podcast. We're just basically going to do our top 10, but know that 10 through 5 were basically a tie.
I think we had 46 options that we ranked. So we tried here. There's a lot.
A lot of great quotes. And we're starting off with a banger here, my dude. This was my favorite quote of the final episode.
If I find out later that there's something you aren't telling me now, well, I'll have someone slice you from your cunt to your chin.
And coming in at 10 is Camellia. And Camellia is with, I'll have someone slash you from your cunt to your chin. That's right, from the sea to the sea. This was powerful. One last powerful bridge to cross. One more bridge to cross for the birds.
Oh, and for the record, I had that at 4, and you didn't rank it, even though it was one of your favorite quotes. So shout out to me for keeping that alive for you.
Thank you, sir.
You did the reverse from me on the next quote, where you had it 4th and I didn't rank it. And honestly, because I figured you would, and that's the Killer Mike quote when he's talking about the Nas album Illmatic, and he says,
You know, when I listen to that record, its projects are in Queens and you can kind of see Manhattan. And I've always thought it was so hopeful and fucking cruel at the same time.
Great scene in a great episode. I mean, come on, man. Anytime we get Killer Mike breaking down his synopsis on Nas's Illmatic, which is widely considered one of the, I mean, definitely in the top 10 of all time hip hop albums ever, widely considered, maybe even top 5 for some people. Great scene, great line. And I'm glad he made the cut here. After that, this is one that we both loved. I mean, you ranked at 7, I ranked at 13. Again, we had 40 some odd of these, bastards to do. So hard to squeeze them all in. But this one, I'm glad it's here. And that was Rachel with.
But you should know, outside of the civility of doing business, I got no use for you. I think you are a ruthless, nasty bitch. I think you have no sense of humor or human fucking decency.
I mean, she just lays in to Wendy Bird here. And what's best about this is as she's leaving, Wendy goes,
I do too have a sense of humor. Asshole.
This was awesome.
Oh,
by
yeah, that's
Rachel.
the end. And
Loved
we
it.
do the dialogue exchanges. That's it. And in here, we've said we have, like 46 options. We ranked our top 16 just to make it easier. So if we say something's unranked, it just means it had a ranking of 17 for mathematical usage.
He's the mathematician.
That's the idea.
He likes math, like Jonah.
Dude, he's a nice guy. I like math. What the hell, man? After that, which would be also tied with an average of 10, is Wendy. When, after she banged her head on the window, you think she's in trouble. Nope, whatever. She's out, but she's mad because, Ruth said they can't launder money through the casino anymore. And Wendy says,
of course she did. I mean, what else can we do today? Oh, I know. Maybe I'll be impaled by a tree and I can lose an eye, and then I can be childless and hunted by a fucking Mexican drug cartel, and I don't know. Oh, what the fuck? I can wear a patch like a fucking pirate.
and Laura Linney saying fucking pirate is just great. I had that at 12, Jamie G had at 12, I had an 8.
Great line. At 6, I had this unranked at 17. You had this at 3.
So also
Glad
tied
you did.
10.0, so still in this big fucking clusterfuck tie.
Clusterfuck tie of number 5 of our 5th rated quote. I'm glad this one snuck in here, Magnum Mills, and it's Rachel.
I don't know why I trusted you. I mean, you're the same selfish asshole you always were.
Now you just own a bigger boat.
Just so great. And it's true. The
And
bigger
it
boat
lands,
being
right?
the
Because it
casino.
lands on Marty. It's completely accurate. And he always wanted, he liked Rachel and wanted to think that she was cool with him. So I think that line landed very well. And then basically the reverse thing here, where you had this ranked at 3, I had it unranked at 17, basically, because we ranked the top 16. And that's a Ruth line. Again, with Killer Mike, which she's talking about Nas's album Illmatic.
It always feels to me like he hates it and misses it all at once. And he's only fucking 20.
All you can say is great line from a great scene of the best episode, in my opinion. I just love this. And it speaks to a larger, theme kind of with the show, man. So I think with Ruth, honestly. And I mean, isn't Ruth kind of like stuck in Queens, staring at the Manhattan skyline, not being able to get there, basically? I mean, kind of, right? I mean, this I don't
It's
know, this
also
was
the
big for
concept
me.
of Ruth, I think at this point is in her late 20s, early 30s. And it's amazing how that time slips away. No one tells you when you're young. And if you're somehow like, I don't know, 18 listening to this, the older you get, the faster time moves. I know it's not supposed to work that way, but that's how it works. Trust me, you turn around and it's 8 months later. It's insane.
That brings us to within our top 5 Magnum Mills. We are now at 4. We've cracked the code, so to speak. I had this ranked all the way up at number 2. It went unranked with you, and it was Omar.
Every time they try to take a pound of flesh, Marty, I grow another layer of skin.
Love this. Speaks to the grit, the determination to find a way that Marty has, but doesn't realize it. Just thought it was just a powerful moment. Really enjoyed the quote by Omar. And I enjoyed Omar's character throughout the entire run here.
I think Omar might have been the most consistent character on the entire show. Liked everything about that. They're just, again, so many good ones. Picking 16 out of 46 or so. Couldn't quite sneak that one past the goalie. But here's an interesting one. And our number 3 overall is a line we both ranked 6. And it's from the very end of the show, maybe the 3rd or 4th line from the end, where Wendy says,
Money doesn't know where it came from.
To me, that has felt like the thesis statement of the show. If the show ever had something to say, that's it, right? Money doesn't know where it came from. That's the point, right? If there's any point, isn't that it?
Gotta be. And yeah, I thought that was great that we both rated that the same. Number 2, I had this rated 9. Magnum Mills had it rated 2 overall, and it was Marty. And this is when he's kind of breaking down and just sharing his real feelings with Charlotte.
You know, no matter what I do, I'm the fucking asshole. No matter what I say, what I do, I get in her way, she gets pissed, I get out of her way, she finds another reason to get mad at me, and it's, you know, it's like it's fucking rigged, you know?
You got to hand it to Marty here. He's not wrong at all. This was his breaking point. Actually, I'm going to call it the tipping point. Shout out to The Roots. Great album. This was his moment, man. And he just kind of let it all out to Charlotte and then became a parent again and felt bad that now she's worrying about all this insanity that he's going out, pointing out how horrible Wendy really is.
Zero arguments with the pick or the analysis. And that brings us to number 1. We both agreed it was their number 1 line. I don't think there was ever any doubt. And this is when Ruth says to acting Sheriff Ronnie,
What I'm telling you is Wendy's playing chess and you're playing fucking Candyland.
It's just so good, dude. I mean, he's playing Candyland, dude, and she's playing chess. I've never heard this. We've all heard the chess for checkers. You know, to
a certain extent, I know how to play chess. I don't know how to play I don't remember how to play Candyland. It's been a long time, dude. I don't remember how to play Candyland.
I mean, you know, you'd figure it out, but doesn't surprise me that we both had number 1 on this. It deserves to be there, and it makes me happy that it's Ruth, dude. We could fill up a top 20 of just Ruth, probably more than that, but yeah, this was an absolute winner, my dude, for sure.
I mean, Roger that. I think that takes us through pretty much everything before we get to the point where it's time to maybe give a grade overall to season 4, part 2. Is there anything else we haven't touched on you'd like to bring up before we go on?
Magnum Mills, one interesting thing that I thought about as the days waned on after taking in the season finale and the series finale here is season 4 came to a wrap and the show came to a wrap. You know, if you listen to our podcast, the Ozark podcast, where we covered episode 14, we weren't super happy with it. And for all the reasons we spelled out, and I think that's fair. But as I started thinking about it and I started thinking about things, is there a chance anywhere in the universe that final scene, instead of Jonah shooting Mel, he actually shoots Wendy? Is there a possibility that maybe that nod from Marty was do whatever you think is right and full confidence in whatever decision he makes? And maybe that was Jonah's way of saying, I'm going to make it so that evil that Mel is trying to stop doesn't win, and that I'm going to stop Wendy from doing anything else that's going to hurt anyone else. And he finally snapped with Ben one last time. Ben and Buddy all in the same symphony of harmony as Jonah comes full circle with Buddy's rifle and Ben in the cookie jar with the goat. Is it possible? I don't know, but it came in my head and I thought it was worthy of discussing, and it could potentially change the chemistry and the makeup, obviously, of the Bird family, which could help influence some sort of spin-off or different universe with the kids, perhaps, if that were the case. Throwing it out there. Thoughts?
I like the idea you're trying to give, but the show just didn't lay the track for it. Because if they were going to do that, they'd have to show it, because that's too much implied. I think you'd have to show it, or at least make it maybe questionable whether the shot hit Mel. That's tough, man. I like the idea. I like the idea of Jonah just not blindly shooting Mel. Maybe he catches. Again, would it be more interesting if he went to shoot Mel and shot Wendy instead? I don't know. It seemed too contrived to get him there in the first place. In the idea that Jonah had the shotgun and now he's willing to pull the trigger, but realistically, when he did pull the trigger before, their lives were literally in danger. Here they're not. Could they go to jail? Yes, but Mel's not threatening to kill them. He doesn't even appear to be armed.
But the last time that, when Jonah found out about Ben, he used that same gun to shoot out all the windows in their house. Could this be one final snap for him where he just decides that, even though that last episode that there's a little bit of like love in the air as with a family, I don't think that excuses his intense hatred and disdain for his mother for what she's done. How does he just forgive her because she checked herself into a mental institution and just told them the truth about Ben? Is that enough? Maybe, but it just doesn't seem like that's totally forgiven. And I think that, you can make a case that maybe that nod and smirk from Marty was, I trust you to do whatever you think is right. And, Marty knew that Jonah loves and respects him. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here.
No,
but it's not completely crazy when you think about it.
I like what you're putting down. I think that's what Marty meant to say, but I think it meant Jonah, do your own thing, not kill Wendy. Unfortunately, I just don't think the show has laid any track for what you're going for here. I think that's more interesting than what the actual implication is with Jonah shooting Mel. But unfortunately, there's nothing that the show has done to suggest that I think that that's how it would end up.
Well, other than Jonah absolutely hate. I mean, we said,
but he already made his call. He came back. Like, that's why would he come back just to get in? You know what I mean? Once he agreed to go back, I think he already kind of. I think that.
So you think he forgave her?
I thought that was the point. That this is like the family that shits where they eat, dies in the same coffin kind of deal. The fact that they came back, they committed to this, and Ruth dying on top of this just cemented the fact that the Birds are, like the Langmores, kind of a cursed family, so to speak. Maybe in a different way, not to be poor or trodden on, but to just be really fucked up.
Well, throwing it out there is just a possibility.
No, I like that.
Hey, part of that's probably because
I also like the idea that this was a prequel story for like a very rich Jonah Bird on his deathbed talking about how their family got their first fortune.
Love that too. Maybe that's the spinoff. We'll see. But before we give our final grade for season 4, part 2, let's review our episode grades. Now, remember, we grade each episode on how clean the proverbial money is, from 0 to 100%. I'll go first here. Episode 8, my favorite episode ever. I had 96%. Looking back, Magnum Mills, I think that's probably low. This deserved probably to be even higher.
Yeah, I had 98. We can talk about what we would retroactively do. And then when we went to episode 9, I went down to an 86.
I had an 87%. So we were starting at kind of our decline there, but right in the same universe. Episode 10, Magnum Mills, I came down to 85%.
And I dropped down to 80, and the trend kept continuing. Episode 11, I went down to 78%.
Episode 80, I went down to 80%. So, another significant drop for me. Episode 12, I went back up to 81%. I liked it just a smidge better than episode 11. I thought I think there was one thing that allowed me to push that slightly over it, but it was basically the same type of episode. And this was that stretch here where I was like, oh man, is it really kind of every episode kind of getting worse a little bit. And I think this is when I started to kind of come to grips with the fact that I got to kind of be honest that that's really what's happening here.
And that's pretty much what happened with me. I went from the 78% in episode 11 down to 77 in episode 12, and then down to 68 in episode 13.
Yeah, I went down to 75% in episode 13. Maybe I was given a little bit too much fluff there. In retrospect, that probably deserves to be closer to a 70 for me, but 75 nonetheless. And then in the final one, buddy, I had episode 14 as a 71%. My average on the season, 82%.
And I, a little bit when Bill and Ted with it on the finale, episode 14, I gave it a 69, dude. And my overall average for the 7 episodes in season 4, part 2 was 79% clean.
69, dudes.
We're going to go ahead and give our final grade here on season 4, part 2, just part 2. And it's just
so you had the 82 overall, I guess, when you average the episodes together. Do you think, are you going to come in at that or under or over it? And then, what is it?
I'm going to come in under it, Magnum Mills. There's certain things I just can't forgive, the car accident being one of them. I'm going to drop it down to a 79. And I don't think there's just too many things where I can't put this in the 80s. And it's not that I'm just, angry and bitter at Ozark, or I hate Ozark. I still love it. It's just, I can't put this part 2 in the 80s for me, man. I gotta keep it at a high C+ at 79%.
That's actually where mine was at a 79 if you took my average. But if you threw out the high and the low, episode 8 and episode 13 for me, you're going to take it down to that 75 range. I don't want to dip that low, but I feel that I have to dock it a bit from the 79 because although I love episode 8, it was my favorite episode of the series, there were a lot of episodes after that. A lot of stuff happened. Some of it I liked, but not a lot of it really made sense in the way that I wanted to. So I'm going to go down to, give me the double 7, 77% clean for season 4, part 2.
I feel like something is missing here, Mills.
Usually, right, we talk about the title card symbols at some point, right? We got no symbols, Jamie G. What do we got? Not that maybe we don't need the bass drum or the snares or whatever, but how about the goddamn symbols?
We got to have little symbols here, and we're from the Joe Blow Football Show, where difficult takes a day and impossible takes a week. I guess, Magnum Mills, let's make up our own symbols for season 4, part 2.
First one's easy. First one's easy. Minivan flipping over.
Yes.
That has to be part of season 4, part 2. Any discussion.
Done deal there. I gotta get in the goat jar. It's just look, dude, they made Ben an entire storyline to the bitter end. He's all the way in to the final season, to the final scene of the show. We gotta have the goat jar, in my opinion, on there. That's getting it.
Been in the show for multiple seasons, it makes sense, and I want to do something, whether it's personal bias or not, but I love that exchange between Ruth and Killer Mike, so I want to work Nas in somehow, and the best way I could think to do that would be to show the Manhattan skyline that Nas could always see but could never quite reach, and that feels a lot like Ruth Langmore's ultimate story arc in Ozark.
For me, the last one here, look, man, we got to have a little fun here on the Ozark podcast. And we got to find something to brighten up just how utterly dark this show can be at times. I'm going with the Portillo chocolate cake shake. We got to have that on there. That represents everything that the birds want their life to be in some way, shape, or form. At least Jonah and Charlotte, and possibly Marty. A simple life where you can head downtown to Portillo's and get a goddamn chocolate cake shake and have that be your caloric intake for a full day. I think I may have just rhymed, but what do you say? Magnum Mills, that's my 4th.
Hey, and I might see you around the way. Hey, what? You eat hay? The next month is May.
Maybe we should head down to the bay.
Just might say, yeah, you're gonna head down to the bay and talk to Doris Day. And
we might not be the biggest fan of season 4, part 2, but Do not get it twisted, peeps. We love Ozark, and don't you worry, we'll be back soon to do an overall breakdown of this great series. We'll compare the seasons, rank our favorite episodes, and much, much more. Should be a literal ton of fun. Please remember, like, subscribe, comment, helps us out so very much. Mills, tell everybody where they can find the rest of our free stuff.
Thank you very much for telling the people about the Stoofs. I'm Magnum Mills, and you can find us at the Ozark Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, at Ozark Podcast on social media. And please send your feedback and thoughts to OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. It's all over. Whatever you got, send it in. We're interested to hear it. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show, who you can find at joeblowfootballshow.com and on social media at Joe Blow Show. We're just about to see a little bump in traffic because Peaky Blinders season 6 is about to come to Netflix, and we've been covered it already on PvP, a Peaky Blinders podcast. Find that on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Peaky Podcast. We're continuing to cover Barry season 3 from HBO. No, it's not the NoHo Hank podcast, but it is the Barry podcast on social media in your favorite podcast platform. We're also covering the 6th and final season of Better Call Saul from AMC. We are Saul over soon on your favorite podcast platform and on social media. And we also can't stop, won't stop, Rockefeller Records Patty's Pub, continuing to cover It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on The Night Pod Cometh. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Night Pod Cometh. Thank you one more time for checking us out. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. This has been the Ozark Podcast presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We'll see you next time. Until then, remember these 3 things. Put chocolate cake in your chocolate cake shake, and keep cookies and only cookies in the cookie jar at all times.
And the bird, bird, bird. The bird is the word. We'll see you next time right here on the Ozark Podcast. This has been the Ozark Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We are not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Ozark, MRC, Aggregate Films, or Netflix. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Any views or opinions expressed here are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations who may or may not be associated with the Joe Blow Football Show. If you have any questions, please contact us at OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. That's OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment.
Hey, my buddy!
And Magnum Mills, I gotta say, our symbol cards on the Ozark Podcast are pretty damn cool. We should probably talk about it just for a quick second. We got Joe Blow. We've got our headphones. We got our bottle of beer. That's a Coors Light from Magnum Mills. And we got our Z.
On your forehead.
I just want to cut a little Z in your forehead. That's all he wanted to do, was carve a little Z in his forehead. That's it.
What else would
we'll see you next time on the Ozark Podcast.